Hey. All right. Welcome everyone to INTERSEC's Technical Steering Committee for 14th of May. We are, first item on the agenda, we are post the spring elections, which means that we've had 5 new elected members to the Technical Steering Committee. So everyone welcome to Neil, who is joining us, having been in a appointed position previously, continues now in his elected role. Duncan, who's been joining us as an observer or non-voting member for the last 6 months, and also joining us new to the TSC are Sebastian Nagel, Alex Moser, and Nicholas Berry. So welcome everyone. Before I go into anything around management of the TSC, I don't know if we want to do just a quick round table with everybody, just with a very quick introduction. I don't know who knows who, and I don't want to make any assumptions on that. So I'll start. My name's Duncan Suter. I work for INTERSEC, and I'm the Technical Steering Committee Secretary. I'll nominate Pete, nominate your next person to avoid the Kevin. Do you want to go next?
Yeah, so I'm Kevin Hammond. I think everyone here knows me. And I'm chair of the Technical Steering Committee.
So you've got to nominate someone next now. Go on.
Thank you, Neil. You're nominated.
I know, I don't my mouth, I get it. I'm Neil Davis. I think you all, but I think everybody knows of me, if not knows me personally. I've been around since the birth of I've been around for 8 years, but I've basically worked on the issues of performance and security and systems engineering aspects with people, okay, over the years. And I've been on I am also on the parameters committee on the networking, which perhaps is relevant to this, because that feeds into the TSC. And I'm going to nominate Nicholas.
Thanks, Neil. I'm Nicola Berry. I'm the Director of Software Architecture at IOG, leading most of the innovation team. So you probably know or work on layers and Peras before that. And yeah, I'm glad to join the TSC and hope that we will do great work together. And let me nominate, well, Alex.
Hi everyone, I'm Alex. I'm with CF. I'm the head of infrastructure since about 2 years. Previously, I was the process engineer, product manager for a company that did crypto abstraction, mostly in the custody side for banks. Through that process, I got involved into about 19 different chains and standards, and through that got into Cardano. Nowadays, I'm concerned with security and use cases that are not speculation driven.
You need to nominate.
I need to nominate. And maybe also relevant, I'm also in the parameter committee. I'm nominating Sebastian.
Hello, everybody. I'm Sebastian, software engineer from Austria or Liechtenstein, and worked in the robotics industry far back. So starting in the back, and I've been involved in safety critical systems there for a couple of years, and now in Cardano. I worked first on Hydra the last couple of years. Building this layer 2 solution, R&D project, now becoming more and more mature. And lately, since maybe half a year or so, I'm focusing more in helping not only the Hydra team, but also other teams at IOE and all kinds of software architecture consultants, and yeah, software engineering topics all over. And maybe an initiative I started a couple of months back, which is most recent here, is the Cardano Blueprint initiative for increasing the knowledge sharing across now emerging teams of multiple node implementations. So make sure that the new core developers or people joining and having ambitions of writing nodes or core central components, having access to lots of the treasure of like knowledge we have in IOE, and just make that a bit more accessible, like a step by step. Yeah, I'm happy to join the TSC now here, and excited to see what's coming. I want to nominate next Marcus.
Hey, hi, my name is Marcus. I'm calling here from Italy. My background is 20 years of ISP business, so co-owner and CTO in an internet service provider business with own data centers, hardware, storage, virtualization use cases, so monitoring, spam filters, and so on. Then in Cardano since 2017 as a community member, as a testnet operator, SPO, and for 2 years now also serving at the Foundation for Community Engagement and Technical Outreach, and also a member of the Parameter Committee. Nominating Adam.
Yep. Good morning, everybody. My name is Adam Ding. I don't work for any of the entities and represent myself, and I've done a little bit of everything. Been in Cardano the last 6 years, and also serve on the open source committee in addition to the technical steering committee, as well as a CIP editor. So I will nominate Mr. Johnny Kelly.
Hello. I also don't work for any of the founding entities, and I'm an independent. But yes, I joined Cardano community in 2021, and soon after that, I was hanging around the spaces to begin with. I volunteered a bit for Empower, and then dropped out of that, and then found out about the catastrophic event from Adam, the person who previously spoke, and got into the infrastructure of Cardano itself, and joined the YOLO net to learn how to build SPO infrastructures. Then, after having learned that, I decided to turn into a tech janitor or non-custodial sysops engineer, if you want to be fancy about it, for some people who may not know the technical but may want to be SPO. So I've helped 3 people do that and taught them how to set up their own at-home cold keys to do the rotations whenever I yell at them. But yeah, so that's what I've been doing, and then I ended up being elected because I ran, and then I'm here until October.
And one more, I think.
Oh, yeah, so I've got to nominate. Is Benjamin? Have you spoken yet?
I was staying quiet in hopes that it would take this long. Hi, everyone. I think I know the majority of the new joiners, but great to have you here. I'm Ben Hart, CTO at M Labs. I sit on this committee as well as the MCC. And when there's not a conflict, I also try to make it out to the OSC as an observer. Great to have you here. Mostly I'm here because we've been downstream dogfooding the output of IO and Co for quite some time, and even done some contributions back the other way, particularly around Plutus. And yeah, certainly it's core to our business and core to a mutual economic bubble that we all live in, that we all have, I guess, a strong way forward. Yeah. Cheers. Oh, who hasn't gone yet?
I think Duncan and Ricky and Matt, I think.
Is Christian gone?
Was Christian here? Oh, and Tex is here as well.
I'm just going alphabetically at this point.
Yeah, I can go real fast.
Yeah.
We're a large
I
meeting.
think Duncan C is the only member of the committee that hasn't had a chance to speak yet. So
Yeah, y'all go. I'm just an observer.
All right, go ahead, Duncan.
Sure, thanks. So I'm Duncan Coots, background in computer science, software engineering. I I'm a partner in a small Haskell software consulting company, and we've been involved with Cardano. Well, we were contracted by IOG to help build Cardano and then rebuild Cardano. So I've been working on Cardano, the core node design, for years and years now, since before mainnet was launched. And I was an observer on the TSC sort of subject matter expert, and just got elected, which is very exciting. So yeah, looking forward to doing good things. Let's see, who was left? Christian, you were about to speak, weren't you? Go for it.
Yep. I think everyone knows me, or at least I know everybody here. Christian, head of the open source office, just kind of being a SME here for open source best practice, etc. Same with text mostly. And then I'm now a professional babysitter. So, and I'll call on Ricky.
Just trying to mute myself here. Yeah, my name is Ricky Rand. I am the general manager of IOE, and for those of you who've been living under a rock for the past several years, we're the, I believe, actually I shouldn't say with that much authority, but I believe we're the largest developer on Cardano. And I have been observing here on the TSC for the past 9 months or something, and I am just an observer. I do not vote. And so I think, Matt, you might be the final one if I'm my final.
I'll go next, and then there is Tex as well. So my name's Matt Davis. I know quite a few people that joined in passing. We've been putting Slack channels together and such like, but I'm quite aloof. I don't join the conversation on Twitter and other places. My role at Insects is technically something called Head of Technical Operations, which is probably very well ill-defined. But I sit on Insects senior leadership team, so not the executive team, which is just Jack and Nick now. My role is facing the blockchain, so I was involved with the coordination of 2 hard forks. I sit on the Security Council. This is my first foray into blockchain, so I only have 18 months experience, which is way less than pretty much all of you guys. But I have spent 15 years working in technology consulting, working in sort of military defense, utilities, and a lot of sort of other sort of deemed national critical type infrastructure services in the UK. So yeah, obviously Duncan's your secretary, and it's the next agenda point. But I'm your sort of conduit into the larger Intersect body of people. So my very poor service to the parameters committee, the TSC, sit under myself. Tex, do you want to wrap it up? I think you are the last one. By no means last. No, he's given up. That's fine. We'll move on. Tex works with Christian in the Insect open source office. He also supports, I think, some of our committees. He sits across sort of best practice across a lot of working groups and committees. You can find him on Discord.
I'm the entrepreneur. He's the business guy. He just makes sure things are orderly and running smoothly. For a lot of it.
Grand. One point is that we have swelled in number, and so the risk of overrunning has significantly shot up. So I think I'm going to make a courtesy call for these meetings going forward to try to keep your points concise so that we have a chance to try and move through our agenda. Just generally, that's on that. One of the things we're going to raise is that the TSC has been meeting at this time on a Wednesday for the best part of a year now, and that hasn't moved. So we thought with the new members joining, it does seem like we're possibly more Europe-centric than we ever have been. But it might be a good idea just to confirm that this timing still works well for everyone. So I'll put a poll in the channel to see if there's any call to move to a time that'd be more convenient for more people, rather than doing that in this call. Okay. So agenda item 2 is on my role as secretary. So in the ISC call on Monday, Nick Cook confirmed that he was going to be putting together a plan that now that the Intersect budget has been approved, part of the plan around staffing within Intersect is that there'll be a move that we're going to become less reliant on the consultants that were a large part of founding Intersect and start to move towards having more permanent hires within Intersect. And that plan hasn't been put forward to the board yet, hasn't been approved, but it's very likely one of the first roles that will move is the TSC Secretary role, which and that's highly likely to be over the next few months, really. Again, the timings haven't been confirmed, but I think this is a good opportunity for the TSC to have a think about the creating a job spec for what would make a good secretary going forward on a more permanent basis. So I know that there was one that was created by the Parameters Committee. I'm actually not sure when that was created. That could maybe be used as a template, but in terms of someone that understands the community and the technology that could be really beneficial to the committee. So I think the plan is, I think the intention behind the plan is that there'll be a good handover period. I think it's unlikely that I'll be disappearing from Intersect immediately, or at least that's what I've been told. We'll see, but that gives an opportunity for a good handover period to ensure continuity of service. As I say, probably not. We're probably a little while away from it, but I want to raise this now because it's now a matter of public record on the ISC.
That's it. It's no secret. There are a lot of consultants within the Intersect side. Duncan and I are on that list. So an agreement in principle. So obviously the specifics of the plan haven't been agreed by the board yet, but the general consensus is there. So I've agreed with Nick that we would take the job description, which was really well written by the Parameters Committee when Lewis left. It might have been even predates that. And it's my recommendation that whoever acts as the TSC Secretary should also act as a Secretary for the Parameters Committee. So we'll hire one person for both secretariat roles. Like I said, the actual timeline is not known yet, but we can start working on that job description draft. I'd like both committees to obviously have input into that, but ultimately it's Jack's decision on who we hire. It will probably be a best endeavours or volunteer position until the budget action and info actions and government actions actually complete. But that kind of helps in my mind. It serves as kind of like a probation period. And then if that individual cuts the mustard and everyone's happy, then Jack will likely make an offer. In brackets, we're also aware, someone raised a really good point a while ago that Intersect doesn't necessarily need to be staffed by loads of full-time staff. The role is potentially suitable, like part-time up-and-coming developer that wants to cut their teeth, get involved a bit more. 2 or 3 days a week salary really helps smaller development firms to grow and prosper and aid some stability. So that isn't off the table either. So we'll share the job description that the Parameters Committee wrote in the Slack channel, and asynchronously you can add your thoughts and concerns to that. We'll sort of splice it all together into one document, and then as the timeline becomes more clear, we will share that with the committee. But yes, and it sounds like I made Duncan read it out about his own job role, which was horrible. I didn't. He offered to talk about it. Duncan has been in the loop over the last 2 or 3 weeks as this has sort of come to light. And it should also be said that it's been in the plan for a long time to sort of right side the staffing of Intersect. It's just never really got to sort of the top 1, 2, 3 priorities. But like I said, there is now a plan that Nick will share with the ISC once the board sign it off, and a large number of consultant roles will well, over the in a controlled manner over the summer, and maybe a little bit longer than that, be handed over to individuals or community members. But like I said, controlled in a way as to not upset the knowledge and to massively sort of damage Intersec's ongoing operations. So my role will be included in that as well at some point. And when we have those details, I will likely come back to the TSC to help review the job spec. And if there's no other questions, I'm happy to pause there for questions. If not, we will move on. Unanimous nodding, that's good. So sorry, a lot of this agenda you have to listen to me. I'm conscious of that. So the next item that came up, which again was discussed at the Intersec Steering Committee on Monday. So if you weren't privy to that, I know Duncan, Kevin and Adam weren't there as secretary and vice secretary. I checked the recording. Yes, we will arrange a bouquet of flowers for Duncan when he finally goes. There is a likelihood that he might go into the core team to backfill some other people coming out. But like I said, once the plan's known, we'll share that. He is it's not disappearing imminently. But anyway, back to the next agenda point. So again, in the ISC on Monday, it was also alluded to that the board have agreed, which I think is right if we think about it, to look at the purpose of committees. So this has been long overdue, right? And it's not aimed at the TSC. It was a very clear ask to review all the committees in their purpose, right? So if we look at the history of the makeup of them, we, and I include myself in that, sat in a room the best part of 18 months ago and wrote out what we believe the purpose of several committees should be, and they haven't changed or haven't been reviewed, probably a better word, since then. And I think we've learned a lot over the last 4 or 5 months, that there are differences of opinions, there's conversations to be had. Rightly or wrongly, there are interpretations or assumptions that have been made. And there have also been changes to the world around us in terms of processes and voting and mainly the budget process. So I have less details on this than I do the secretary role, but the board have committed to review it as soon as practically possible in their agenda. And I do hope, I have stressed the point, I really hope it's a two-way conversation, but it's just to be aware that that is happening. And again, as soon as details are confirmed and the places for the conversations are set, it will be communicated out to all the committees. Like I said, I think it's a good thing, right? We've worked in ambiguity for quite a while. Potentially, Kevin, yes, but we have to admit there is a, wrongly or rightly, whether we believe it true or not, a difference of opinion currently that needs to be addressed. And there are some committee remits which don't make sense, or they've moved on. Another example is the civics committee, right? Its initial purpose was to pass the constitution, but we have a constitution now, right? It needs to set its next agenda point, its next aim, its next ambition. But I think it's a good point for the committee, especially as we have 5 new members now to sit down and have a discussion. So that is coming. Like I said, we don't have specific details. It's not slated yet for when the initial board discussion will happen, but it is confirmed that it will happen. So yeah, apologies I don't have more details, but it's just early sight of that's going to come down the line. I have an ask on the back of it, which is, what are your individual opinions on what you want to do in terms of what do you think would add value, or what do you think would be a goal to achieve? Like I said, I don't want it to be a one-way street in terms of communication. I want to be diligently forearmed, and I don't mean a single mandate that we stick to, but your own individual opinions about what you would like to do for the benefit of Cardano or development or core development or networking or whatever it might be, right? So that we go into that discussion with some ideation. I'm going to swap the kind of bullet points over One of those things is to give ourselves, or to set ourselves, in conjunction with the ecosystem, the board, the community at large, some KPIs, some targets. So something we can use to quantify or qualify the outputs that we give and we make, to help steer the ship. Does that make sense? Sort of.
I think one of the things we've got to consider, Matt, is the outcome of the intersect budget proposals. Until we know,
yes, I agree.
It's hard to define a specific purpose. In particular, there were items that were being loaded onto the TSC that the TSC had historically considered to be outside its remit.
No, I agree. Like I said, there is dependencies in that conversation, and they are duly noted. That roles and responsibilities or asks from Intersect or the budget process on a committee need to be understood to be able to have a remit which is fitting of all of those parts. Sorry, I should have mentioned that.
Yeah. And as long as it's not net promoter scores, I'm okay.
No, that's fine. Like I said, I want it to be led by you, right? And my two examples.
And what I mean by that is they have to be relevant to what the activities we can perform and actually accept like that. But not how do people feel about this process, right? Yeah.
No, I agree. It has to be tangible things that what I want to be able to articulate is, or what I want the TSC to be able to articulate or would like, is in 6 months' time when we go into the next budget process, and I appreciate that no one knows what that looks like yet, but 2026 in some shape, that we have merit and backing and good standing and something demonstrable in terms of this is the benefit that we can bring. And like I said, again, I appreciate we just spoke about consultancy, and KPIs is probably the most consultancy type word you can pick, or smart objectives, as they say, yeah. But something that's tangible, right, that we can stick to as a North Star, that we can look back on and say, yeah, actually, we set out to do that and we did it. Whether that be, review specific points of work, go and write, 5 problem statements that exist, or define risks, something out there. The other week we had a really good discussion on like the KES Agent. Likely the outcome of that is, we should have gone to, well, we should go to the SBO town hall and have a much broader conversation. But to qualify the problem, right, to write a problem statement that we can all sort of look at and nod our heads and be proud of, that's a problem that needs fixing. Right? We might not be able to solutionize it, we might not have the money or the budget to go and fix it, but we can well define a community problem with the community's help. We can also, set ourselves goals. I'll get to Sebastian's hand in a second. He raised the point around, I think actually it was Nicholas or Sebastian raised the point around documentation. We should be doing stuff to qualify what the needs are of our technical developers, whether that be core vendors or dApps or other such, pockets of the ecosystem like Oracles. What are their biggest problems with Ledger, with Plutus? And, there's an awful lot of collective knowledge in this room. We should be using it to build something that adds, tangible benefit to the community. Sebastian?
Yeah, as a new member of this committee, Kevin mentioned that there might have been some past discussions on purpose, remit of the committee, and maybe things have changed, but also where would those past discussions be found, or any materials we could we new members especially can catch up on?
Just a good point, right? There are a number of recordings which are on YouTube. It's not quite ready yet, and I don't want to throw Duncan under the bus, but this afternoon he started to pull together just a collection of material which highlights why there are discrepancies, right? So in various documents across the knowledge base, across blog posts which have gone out, we've paraphrased ourselves, and part of that is Intersect's fault, right? I'm not saying it's all on the committee. And that outlines just, the variety of things that we've said that our remit is in different documents and different places at different times. So that's a good point to sort of understand what has been said, why I think it needs clarity more than anything. because it's kind of, it's been morphed and paraphrased over time, and there isn't a single source of truth. Like I said, that isn't all on the committee by any stretch, right? There's definitely admission from Jack and the exec team and me that that's on us and Intersect as well, that it hasn't been clear, and the conversation hasn't kept pace with the changes that have happened around us. So we will share that. If that's okay, Duncan. We'll tidy up the document you wrote this afternoon, and we'll send it out just with the links to where some of these differing articles exist. And that's about it. I did draw like a pretty picture, because my mind works in pictures rather than words. So I will share that via the Slack channel as well with a brief explanation. Like I said, that's my opinion, and I have absolutely no bearing on the conversation with the board or you guys, right? All that I'm trying to ensure is that there's a fair conversation that happens, and we get to a remit which is tangible and doable, and more than anything adds benefit, right? There's a heck of a lot of experience in this room that a heck of a lot of people would benefit from, and we need to leverage that. Duncan, do you want to take the last point? You're more versed on this. If everyone's happy with that, like I said, if people have specific ideas or thoughts, if you don't feel comfortable just to socialize them in the Slack channel, then please feel free to reach out to Duncan and me individually. Like I said, I just want a collection of your individual goals and remits to put together, just to set the breadth of the conversation that needs to happen. And there might be some stuff that I personally aren't aware of, or things that exist in the ecosystem that we should be paying more attention to, or being more involved with as a committee. So I know the parameters committee are intrinsically involved with the PCP process. Should the TSC do the same with Cardano problem statements? Should we use that as a forum to have open and wide discussions? Yes, I appreciate there might be costs. That's why we need to put it all on the table and work out what's feasible and adds benefit. Right, unless there's any questions.
I was going to say, I think one of the ideas that Duncan raised was the idea of a technical town hall, Matt.
Yes.
So this is something that will be good to progress going forwards, and we've started to do that to some extent by releasing recordings of this session, but having a regular Q&A would be helpful.
Yeah, no, totally agree. We should, we can, again, I'll put that as a specific thread on the Slack channel, and between now and next Wednesday, or whenever we agree the next suitable time is for a meeting, people can add their thoughts and feelings to it to hash out a bit of a standing agenda, and we can look to set it up as soon as possible.
So if I can jump in on the remit, I think that's indeed one of the most important things, because there are a lot of people in here, weekly, 1 and even more, 1.5 or 2 hours. That's a lot of time and cost. So that should only be invested and spent when we have clear ideas what the scope is. So if we can actually do something meaningful and relevant, then it makes sense. But if we end up with a redefined remit or scope that is more or less like nudging off something, but not really doing something relevant, then I think this is too much expert hours and expensive hours spent here. So the remit, as Kevin wrote, was defined and confirmed last year already. If there is another idea for a remit, I would like to read it. So where it comes from, or is there an idea? And I'm happy to read through it. Maybe it sounds better. But as for me and as for now, I'm fine with the remit that we had in the last months.
No, like I said, you've all got your individual preferences. I'm not here to sway you, but to your point, right, there's an awful lot of knowledge and cost in these meetings with these people, and I want to see that come to, you know, ecosystem-wide benefit. Duncan Coots.
There's the kind of elephant in the room point here that you know, the committee in the last, as I was observing in the last 6 months, was doing things which it thought was within its remit, and ended up getting overruled by the Intersect board. So if we're reviewing remits, it's a good opportunity to make sure that there's clarity on what the remit of the TSC really is.
100%, right, and that's why I mean we need to have a two-way conversation to make sure it's it's properly understood by all parties, the committee, the board, the membership, and hopefully the community at large, right, that they see us as a viable source of excellence or truth or help or whatever that we can, the words we settle on, they understand why we exist and why we're here and what we add and how we can help them and how they can help us. But I agree, that's the purpose of campaigning internally to get the board to have these conversations with the committees to make sure there is unilateral understanding of why we exist and what we're doing, rather than confrontation or just sometimes just wrong assumptions and Chinese whispers, and it all gets a bit messy, right? So I don't want a conversation where there's people in the middle. I want it together and we all say in the open, we're doing this, we're doing these things, we all agree they can add benefit, and we can kind of do something unimpeded, if that makes sense. Sorry, Duncan, I know you're desperately trying to take notes as I waffle on. Like I said, it's just a note to say that this conversation's slated to happen and things are going to be looked at, and for you to collect your thoughts. Duncan, should we move on to chair and vice chair?
Absolutely. So with the new elections completed, I reached out to ask what the rules were within Intersect around chair and vice chair positions. And Tex, do correct me if I stray off with any of this, but my understanding is that the only mandate that there exists for each of the committees is that there should be the offer of a vote for the chair or vice chair positions following an election. That's not to say that there has to be a vote if the TSC is currently happy. There are a couple of things that I think fall into this. The terms of reference within the TSC do need to be significantly updated, not just within the new members, the scope that's previously been discussed, but actually how the TSC want to operate in terms of the chair and vice chair positions. That hasn't been fully written up, and largely the committees are fairly free to self-govern with regards to that. So there are a number of options, and I know that especially for new members, I'm throwing this out for the first time. Perhaps we can, I can list them out, but for example, we may decide that actually the best time to do elections is post the remit being agreed. That maybe is helpful with the new clarity of purpose, and so it's worth waiting. It might be that we're happy to have some sense of continuity and continuation for now anyway. And then perhaps actually we want to, each committee has approached it slightly differently. So, and I'm going to get which committee does which one wrong, so I won't reference them. But one of them doesn't elect its chair, and instead it elects its vice chair. And the idea is that you have 6 months in the vice chair role, and then 6 months later, you automatically become the chair. Another one has it being a 12-month position, but the roles are they're what's it, countersunk. They're done at different times. So after spring elections, you'd vote on vice chair, and after the autumn elections, you vote on the chair, and that helps again with the sense of continuity. So there's an immediate discussion for what we want to do now, but there's also that ties into what we want to set the rules as for going forward within the committee. I think I've explained everything I want to do. So yeah, Marcus, do you want to?
So I don't have a strong preference on this, but what I would suggest is that we are just one of many committees, and ideally also to explain to our members and in the public what we do and how it works. It would be much easier to understand if all the committees have the same processes and rules and not the chaos of different things. Say this, yeah, I don't have I'm happy with the all, or I don't have a strong preference in the different ideas that you just suggested. Just, I would say it should be the same thing for all the committees, and this is also valid for a remit or scope. So our scope, of course, is technical, but if our scope will be only advising, and for example, the marketing group is actually steering, that will be something where I would have a lot of question and also exclamation marks.
No, I agree. That was a point that was discussed internally when we started this discussion the other week around committee remits. Is actually, if you look at the way they're written, they do actually use different language, different vocabulary, which is strange because they're all written at the same time in the same room by the same person. But they do differ slightly, and actually that aids confusion, right? We've used different descriptives or adjectives across them, and actually they should be more similar. But I get your point, Marcus. It's a good point. We can take that back and say actually that's that can be an option for the TSC to say we vote for having a standard and that's what we'll adopt. So it's clearer.
Just reading the notes here. So Johnny's happy to wait for the definition of the TSC goals and responsibilities to be confirmed before electing. Neil agreed. Duncan was happy with the out of sync 6-month phase. Okay. I don't know. Perhaps it's worth a vote in this call to. Maybe I can put it out as a poll later. Maybe that's a better way of doing it. Do we want to put off making a decision now until and say that we'll hold the vote once the remit's been agreed? Is that seeing some thumbs up? So anyone disagree? Does anyone disagree?
It's evidently sensible and has lots of thumbs, but yeah. If anyone has a difference of opinion. Then.
Does anyone disagree with that as a that they'd see no dissent? That's okay. That gives us a little bit of time to decide on how we want to manage it. So that is helpful. Okay. Nice
maybe what is the role today or up to now of the chair and the vice chair in a nutshell? Can someone explain?
Well, that's the other thing, that the role of the chair and the vice chair may well significantly change depending on what the remit of the TSC becomes.
Yeah, exactly.
Which is
exactly.
Yeah, can I share the official document that we wrote up 6 months ago and what that's probably a better way to.
That works for me. Thanks.
Yeah, I think essentially it's to coordinate this group to attend meetings, other INTERSEC meetings as required, and to ensure that any business that this group agrees is carried out. So it's the usual things you would expect.
Yeah, we can, as like I said, with that collection of kind of other descriptions about committees, we'll socialise that, and we can make sure the existing charters pinned or put in the Slack channel as well. Apologies, first session, bit dull, lots of reading. But it's, like I said, I think it's overdue to have a good conversation about it all. So Kevin was largely right in his summarization of the key tasks. If we commit to something, it's to make sure we finish it, and then there is likely sort of one other meeting every other week, where the players of all the relevant or all the existing committees get together, and it's how knowledge gets disseminated. But again, that potentially is under discussion in sort of committee purpose and structure. We want to make it clear and as lightweight as necessary.
Is there any other business anyone wants to raise in here? Otherwise, we have the rare opportunity to close the TSC early.
So Christian wanted to revisit the thorny question of the KES Agent repo.
Yeah, so I think what I'm proposing is if we were to move forward with it, it would fit in the project lifecycle framework as a incubation project. Therefore, it doesn't necessarily qualify it under big budget spend. We could find a maintainer to retain it and then give it a year cycle to see if it has adoption for it or not, and then archive it according to the process. That way it's not a burden, and it kind of alleviates the concerns Adam was raising in the last call. Your call, Adam.
Yeah, the problem is without a big budget spend to actually integrate it into the existing node architecture, it will never be adopted, because right now it's just a standalone piece of software that doesn't work with the existing Haskell node as is, as far as I understand it, which is why we were getting ready to spend another $1 million on this thing in 2025, 2026 to integrate it, quote unquote. So until we get some clarity on that, I don't feel comfortable that it's worth $1 million at this point for an academic exercise. Nor is it worth $1,500 a month to maintain somebody to sit around and hope that somebody picks up that ball and runs with it. But I will cede the floor to Duncan, who's much more familiar and close to this than I am, so he would know better.
Just to add a bit more information, it is partially integrated already. I mean, the KES agent is a standalone thing, but the protocol, the protocol that it speaks is, I'm not quite sure if it's actually integrated with the node yet, but all the work is already there and done. It's there in branches, if not already integrated into the node. And all of the crypto that it relies on, the crypto primitives to do, secure memory erasure and blah, blah, that's already done. And again, if it's not actually integrated into the node, like main branch right now, there's like branches that are all ready for it. So it's not just a standalone thing. It is the useful part of, a key KES key management system. And I would say, I've stated my view before, but just to state it again, I would say this committee ought to decide and actually vote on whether we think it is in scope or not. I would vote for it because I think, I would say, we ought to make a decision about whether we believe, this is part of the protocol or should be part of the protocol. And if we believe it is, then it's it's part of the core, and we have to finish it. Adam was saying it might maybe $1 million a year. That sounds much more than I would expect. I mean, I think this is pretty much a one-person project, with a little bit of help from other people for, talking to the community and soliciting feedback and all the rest of it. That sounds, a bit much. So I don't think it's that. I don't think it should be that expensive, and I think this committee should decide whether we believe it to be in scope, and we can have an argument about that, some other time.
Well, just to quickly highlight, sorry, son's a little fussy. But there's two constraints to think of, is that projects under Intersect to have budget allocated to them have to be in a growth phase according to the life cycle framework. And this one would come over in incubation, so therefore it'd be on the supplier who is maintaining it, unless there's more growth for it to justify the spend. And that falls for the maintainer retention program as well, unless we change those constraints. Just wanted to add that clarity.
Can I just say I largely agree with Duncan Coutts on this one. I think this committee ought to have a strong say on whether it ought to be considered as a key component of security within the system. And I think if there is a substantial budget, a lot of it could be applied to educating the SPOs in the need for this, because I think it's not well understood. And I think from the comments that Adam has had over the last few weeks, that obviously there are plenty of people who don't think it's worthwhile. But I'm not saying it's my decision whether it's worthwhile or not worthwhile, but I think it could be the TSC's decision whether it's worthwhile or not worthwhile. You could make a recommendation, and that recommendation could be followed through with the right sort of educations of why we actually need this if we really think it's the case. And that could be $1 million, because you've got to get out there and talk to people and convince them and show them and help them. So I'm sort of in your camp, Duncan, on this one, but in fact, maybe there is a spend needed for this in reality to bring it over the line.
I'm going to ask the question then of, if we assume that the TSC wants to make the decision on this, and it should make the decision on this, and someone challenged me to say that it shouldn't, what do the members need to make an informed decision? And by the time that we come back, or by the end of the week, or certainly by the time we come back next week, we've made a call on this.
Yeah, just to clarify, it's just the TSC and OSC take a vote on incubating projects, and that's what the request is. Does it come in to Intersect? So that's all the ask is. We can work all the other constraints upon that decision.
Johnny's got his hand up.
Yeah. So in the chat there, Adam Dean has put a link to the IOE proposal that has been ratified and is hopefully soon to be on-chain ratified as well. But yeah, they have a line item there for $667,000 between IoT and well-typed as the named supplier. Obviously, as we know from last week's meeting, that will no longer be the case. So one thing we would need to know is who will be the maintainer going forward if it is no longer well-typed. If it is to be incubated under Intersect, we would need to know who would be interacting with it in order for it not to die on the vane.
Just to add to that, I think as part of Christian's proposal is that, it's twofold, isn't it? Like, we can adopt something within Intersect, but that doesn't guarantee that we'll find an owner for it. So, I think us saying if it's something we should be concerned about, yay or nay, is only a part of the conversation, right? If we say if theoretically that's a yes, then Christian might have a small sum of money to keep the lights on, but someone's got to want to do it for that amount of money, right? And that might be a no. I still think, yes, there is a huge amount of collective wisdom in this room, but what we don't know is whatever the outcome, if we made that decision, do it or don't do it, what do the SBOs think? I still think that they need to be educated, right? If they were privy to this conversation and heard, Adam's thoughts on one side versus Duncan's on the other, both equally right, they could come to their own conclusion and give us a guiding light, right? If 200 of them turn around and go, actually, that kind of makes sense. If you did do it, I'd use it. Then we have our answer, right? If 200 of them kind of look at each other and go, no, I'm just going to take the risk, then the answers our question. It's vendor agnostic. It's we need to there is a there is a question, if it's core or not, but the bigger question surely is there a need? You can tell people to padlock their bike.
No, yeah, but Matt, in one sense, as Duncan described last time, we haven't implemented PROOS until this has been done.
Yeah.
Right, that's number one. And the other thing is the lack of this. I think and this is why the discussion has to be had. We can't do it now. The lack of this is a gating item towards adoption. Right. So basically, there's a difference between individuals seeing the need and the fact that the non-existence of this safe erasure means that it won't pass governance in large organizations, right? And that's actually, for me, that's what I see as the biggest problem here, is the lack of this is basically means Cardano would fail any governance test from a large corporate institution who was trying to adopt it, because we said it would be there and it's not there. Right, and there was a box which we haven't ticked.
Well, that's my misinterpretation of the conversation. But we should write this down, right?
Yes, I know. I mean, we had this, but I think this is almost, we need to put together a couple of slides saying the pros and cons, what would happen if it did, and then have that discussion either amongst the committee members at least, if not open session. But I think,
like I said, if the direction is going to come to light. We just need to do enough stuff to make it obvious, right? And it might be, the SBOs could say, no, probably not going to do it. But actually, your point might be absolutely valid, right? That there's big organizations out there looking at Cardano going, oh, only if. And if we can help qualify that in some way, then actually, the argument becomes self-answering.
I think, there's,
So we should use our collective wisdom to put all sides of the argument down. And then make a recommendation and just push it out there. That's what I see our jobs becoming. And if it's a very good argument, the right people will listen to it.
I want to run with Matt's suggestion there, because I'm aware that this has been on the agenda for a couple of weeks now, and so I'm keen to try to get it, to move the discussion on if we can. Are we happy with an action then that the TSC presents both sides of the argument? It certainly seems like that would be a fair representation within the group, and then we put that out, or does it need to be do we need to have that discussion internally before we just go out with a recommendation? Those seem like the two options.
Yeah, what I proposed, Duncan, is we put together a document where both sides of the argument are discussed, and we can then take a vote on the position to take. Ben?
Yeah. I mean, do we have a budget from anyone? I think there was an original proposal, but it seems like that's been dropped by IO. Like, I don't think the members of this committee are about to pick this up. So, like, do we have an interested party who would pick up maintainership, and do we have a budget from them? If someone comes in low, this is an easier decision, right?
It's unclear whether or not it's been dropped, because the answer was there's been no impact on deliverables, right? So there could be someone else lined up to continue the work.
If only we had someone on the call who could answer us.
Well, we're not dropping anything. I mean, everything's still open. Yeah.
So we should consider the previously submitted budget as the de facto one.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes.
Okay.
I do think we can decouple, the recommendation from the work, right? We could make a recommendation that absolutely everyone in Cardano agrees with. If no vendor wants to do it, it's different, right? The idea is we float the recommendation there, and based on the merit of the individuals that have helped curate it and tell both sides of the story, it's then up to the, a plucky vendor to come along and go, do you know what? I think I can do that. And come and talk to us. Say, hey, you guys raised a really good point about this KES agent. Is anyone doing it? And we go, well, either yes, in which case go and collaborate with these people, or we go, no, we don't think so. And we help them get their proposal across the line. Like, the doing it is a secondary thing. I think Adam put his hand up.
In the interests of, sorry, Adam.
Yeah, I mean, just real quick, you guys seem to be missing the point that us, quote unquote, adopting this package into Intersect ownership gives it a certain amount of legitimacy. And as of yet, except for Neil raising a bogeyman that enterprise won't adopt Cardano without this thing, there is no lead customer. There's literally nobody you can point me to that is going to use this once we do this integration work, because it's, again, up to this point, merely an academic exercise to, quote unquote, complete Preos and be true to the original source material. But we have 6 years of people doing it incorrectly that already, this risk already exists. It's out there. So again, who's this lead customer? Who's going to take care of this? Who's going to maintain it going forward? By us, Intersect, quote unquote, adopting it, we legitimize that this is maybe the right or wrong way to do it. Ergo, it becomes more, we must keep maintaining and paying for it because we've always done it that way. And that's the risk. If this wasn't well typed or IOG proposing this, would we adopt some random software package that Johnny Kelly wrote because he says that it's critical for Cardano? What is our measure for accepting any strays that get tossed our way going forward? Because I'm more than happy for well typed to continue to own this, or input output to continue to own this and take care of it themselves with their own budget and prove to the community that it's a valuable tool. But until that proof of value is brought, I don't think Intersect is in a place right now to adopt new strays. Essentially, our house is already full.
Duncan?
I think what Kevin suggested, that we put together a document that outlines all the arguments, Adam, and then I mean your questions are completely legitimate, and I think they're answerable, and we should write it all down and argue it out. And we might need to put it on the agenda and have an argument amongst ourselves before we move to voting on it. I mean, I think the summary will be, it's not a feature for a customer. It is for everyone. It's for the security of the entire system. And most people thought they had it already. They just didn't realize that they didn't. But we can go into the detail, when we write it all down and argue it out.
Can I take then that as an action against, I say, the group collectively, for those that want to input then, if we're writing a document that presents both sides? Adam, just pick on you. It feels like you're the lead with the challenge, against. Are you okay to do that? And then I feel like, Duncan, you probably the case for. Grant.
Should we let Nicola finish off?
I was just thinking that if there's a question about what will be the adoption impact of having the KES agent, maybe we can also reach out to the product committee and see what they think about it and what they think the impact of having the KES agent could be for customer adoption, probably, because this is probably more a product question than a technical question. I agree that we need to answer why it's important to have it. Whether it will lead to more adoption or not is probably a more product question.
If I can go for 2 seconds just to highlight the process behind it. And I think that's a good highlight. That's what I'm missing currently from the incubation process, is a reconciliation. If OSC and TSC agreed on a project coming in, how do you reconcile that other than the governing board? And that could be where we bring in product's opinion and the majority wins that way. But simply all that's mainly happening, I'm going to share screen real fast, Duncan, is we're just doing this right here where the project comes in. I'll prepare the documentation for y'all. There's a submission form it was supposed to do. I didn't know it would be this complex on the back and forth. So I'll prepare that doc, give it to you, Adam, to do the pros and cons and follow y'all's decision. But essentially you do have the go, no go. And then if you need more additional requirements, you just push it back to the project to clarify that. And then they resubmit. So that is still an option. It doesn't have to necessarily go for adoption. And I'll share this with y'all. Just wanted to clarify that real fast.
Okay. Good. I'm glad that we didn't finish up early. That would have ruined our streak. So, is there anything else before we close up today?
For information, I'm putting together metadata for the parameter committee proposal to change the Plutus limits, memory limits. But I haven't completed that yet. It's still in draft. I'll circulate that when it's ready.
Thank you all for joining. I do appreciate it's the first week, and in typical fashion, we go a little bit over.
Grand.
As ever, your participation is very much appreciated.
It was a good technical discussion, Matt. That's the point.
Thanks, everyone.
I'm glad there was a technical discussion also, not only political. So it makes me come again, right?
There's a second meeting